Welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable. After a very, very long hiatus, much longer than was anticipated, we are back to do our college football preview. So, what better time to get back into the swing of things than talking college football? And we're like 3 weeks away. And yes, thank you guys out there for staying on us and giving us a hard time and reminding us how close football is, and we still haven't had a podcast out. So we appreciate you guys still looking for this podcast. That means that there's actually, 4 or 5 of you out there that listen to this and really care about what we have to say. We hope there's more than that, but we do appreciate all the fans that have been out there talking to us and wanting some college football previews. Guys, it's all on the host right here. I take full responsibility for not having anything the last couple of months. But, I've told Blair here that we added a third child back in March. And, that just honestly kicked my butt. And I've been in a dizzy spin just trying to juggle everything. And unfortunately, baseball and early spring football talk suffered because of that. So we apologize for not giving you the dose of college football this season, but we are back. We are ready to do some college football. We're going to look at 2 teams today. So we're going to tackle 2 and 3 teams as we go here to get us ready for the football season, which is almost 3 weeks away as we speak to the day, almost a couple, maybe just shy of that, or just a little past that, 23, 24 days, something like that. But whatever the case may be, it's just really, really right around the corner. So Blair Smiley's joining me today. Welcome, Blair. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, man, it's good to be back, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you've even grown facial hair, I think, since the last time you've been on. I don't know. Did you have it before? I know you've had it a while now, but
yeah, I'm trying to think of when I actually grew the hair. I think Thanksgiving of last year, so I'm almost a year into it, man. Just crazy.
You've had it for a while then.
Yeah. So
well, guys, we're gonna talk some football, and for those that have never stumbled upon this podcast before, we kind of look at the SEC world as we know it from somewhat of a fan's perspective. We all have some allegiances to teams, whatever it might be, whether it's Mississippi State, we have Ole Miss, we have an Ole Miss guy, we have a couple UT guys that have come on, we have some Alabama guys, I'm a Kentucky guy. Who else? We've got LSU, we've got Georgia. So we've got a number of the SEC teams represented from a fan's perspective, and that's the kind of way we look at this. But we don't do it all Paul Feinbaum fanish. We're not going to be that insane about it. We try to be realistic about the way we look at these things, but we are coming at it from a fan side of things too. So we have these allegiances that are probably going to sway us one way or the other, and we're not going to be afraid to tell you how we feel about some things. And as we look back on these things, it's fitting we're kicking off this time with Auburn and Texas A&M. I think these are, if you look back at last year's preseason picks from us, these are 2 of the teams that we got the most flack from, Blair, as far as what we thought they would be. With Dennis Erickson, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
That kind of ended up being what happened with both of these teams as the season progressed. And, while we were a little wrong at the beginning for A&M, when it was all said and done, we weren't too far off base on our assessment for those teams. So it's kind of fit.
You there?
I'm here.
Okay. You froze up on me, my bad.
That's okay.
No, I think I don't know what you just said there in the last minute or so, but I think it's also fitting that these 2 teams are, when you look at the SEC this year, probably 2 of the biggest moves in assistant coaches happened to these 2 teams. And so that's what I think makes them pretty intriguing on the defensive side of the ball. Both of them are teams that, have offensive-minded coaches, and their defense As Auburn last year, they could score on anybody, but they couldn't stop anybody. Texas A&M could throw points together, and they couldn't stop anybody. So that's kind of the intriguing thing this year going into this is, you got John Chavis at Texas A&M, you got Will Muschamp, two of the best defensive coordinators in all of the SEC, and in the last 15 years, and how they shape their first year there is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, no, for both of these programs the last couple of years, it's not been the defense that we've talked about being a strength for them. What we've talked about is how suspect will Auburn's defense be, and how poor Texas A&M's defense is. Defensively, they improved slightly last year, but not exactly where I thought they were. I thought they would be a little more advanced on the defensive side of the ball, have lots of talent, had a lot of young talent. When we said that 2 years ago, last year we were saying that talent's bound to have gotten better. Well, now we're in year 3 of that young talent having a lot of position time on the field, and having John Chavis to be their defensive coordinator. That completely changes the way you're going to look at Texas A&M's defensive side of the ball now. It's one of those that's, I think, going to rank one of the highest in the SEC because of the experience they now have. Because they were starting true freshmen 3 years ago, and those guys have still seen the light of day. Injuries have had some impact on A&M. You got you just have a lot of opportunity from Texas A&M on the defensive side of the ball to make a lot of ground up.
Yeah, and I think if we kind of jump into Texas A&M, John Chavis, the chief, he's done it at Tennessee, he's done it at LSU. Interesting on how he left LSU and kind of, at one point in time he had 2 lawsuits, one against Texas A&M and one against LSU all at the same time. It was like really weird, but I don't know how all that stuff works. But he goes to Texas A&M, and if you sit there in the West, that's kind of a scary, that's a kind of a scary deal. You got you got the kids on the end for Texas A&M. They're going to be coming after the quarterback. I think if I look at Texas A&M, I think defensively they're going to have a defensive line that's going to be able to get after you. They're going to have a secondary that should finally be pretty seasoned. Even though they've had some breakdowns in the last 2 years, they've got a lot of playing time behind them. The question would be linebacker. I know they've had some key injuries there. They got a guy coming back from injury, so those are probably the biggest question mark on the defensive side of the ball. But John Chavis, you look at LSU last year, and everybody says, that was a really down year. They finished 9th in the country in defense, and so he always gets it done. He did it at Tennessee, he did it at LSU, and I don't really see anything different at Texas A&M. I think this year will be a little bit of a filling out process for him, but he's got some talent to work for. So I'm really interested to see. And Shane, I don't know, I believe it was Stuart which one was the national writer that came out, and that was his basically pick to win the SEC West and make it into the college playoff was Texas A&M. And a lot of the thing behind it was I think they have 3 home games or 3 away games that were worth anything, and one of them against Vanderbilt. And so they had a pretty, outside of the state of Texas, they didn't go very far. So it was a pretty interesting idea. But that's one thing I'll be looking for on the Texas A&M on the defensive side of the ball is, how do they plug up the middle core of that? If they can get some linebacker play, they could be dangerous on defense.
Yeah, because they get the first game, even though it's an away game, they get Arizona State. It's at Houston.
Yeah.
So
I don't even think they go outside the state of Texas until like middle or end of October. I think I heard like first 6 or 7 games or something.
Yeah, I've got their schedule pulled up right here.
Yeah. So
and as you look at it, the first 3 games are great primers for them. They've got Arizona State, Ball State, and Nevada. You expect them to be able to win all 3 of those games.
What's Arizona State got? They got Todd Grantham, right, at Arizona State. I mean, they were pretty flashy last year, and I can't remember quarterback-wise what they got coming back, but that could be a tough game. In Houston, that'll be an interesting thing to open up with. You never know how the first season opens up with, but
yeah. I mean, if you were from an SEC standpoint, Arizona State's not going to be a bad team when you look at the Pac-12, but you expect you have Arizona State, and like I was saying just a second ago, Blair, before I lost you, it looks like, if you're looking at the SEC, you expect Texas A&M to be able to beat Arizona State, even though they should be much improved and they're a pretty good team in the Pac-12. When you face up against an SEC team, almost every time you're looking under the rest of the schedule, that Ball State and Nevada should be gimmies. But week 4, even though it's in Texas again, that's a tough game for them, and that's Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to talk about,
going to be like, oh, we got to play Arkansas this week.
You want to talk about the real deal in the West. That's the team right there. And while they still don't leave to, like you said, they get 2 away games that still stay in the state of Texas. That one's not an easy win for them. And if you want me to bet right now and say, where would I throw the money? I got to put it on Arkansas.
Yeah.
But then they follow that up, and I'm not looking at buys, but they follow that up against your team, the Bulldogs, October 3rd. And then they host Alabama. They travel to Ole Miss. So that's a pretty good 4-game stretch right there.
Yeah, it's pretty tough, man. Everybody in the West has got one of those.
And then who knows what we're going to get, and we'll look at this team later. What are you going to get with Steve Spurrier, South Carolina Gamecocks? To hear Steve talk, the old ball coach, he's fiery this year, and that generally, if he's going to go talk a game, it's generally he's got something to back it up with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when coach feels good about their team, is when he's kind of a little salty, and that's what's going to be interesting. I think Texas A&M, defensively, we think, obviously with the big addition, that's going to be the big question mark. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make a quarterback competition with the rookie coming in, and then the kid that was there last year. Yeah, and but we'll see. He could throw the ball around. The thing I think with Texas A&M, they got how many explosive wide receivers do they have? You got Speedy Noel. You got all these guys that are really, really talented. They got big guys. They got they got guys that can shake you. It's the running backs. It's the running game. Like, if you've seen Texas A&M to take that next step offensively under, what they've actually done, that's probably the next step. Is they've got to be able to grind out and get short yardage when they need it, those types of things. And in the SEC West, they're going to have to be able to do that. And I think that's a question. If there's a linebacker question on the other side, I think that's the big question on Texas A&M's offensive side is, hey, are they going to be able to get a steady running game that they can commit to when they get into short yardage down the stretch where they got to run the football some and not be so flashy. So we'll see what that looks like.
One thing, looking at their offensive side of the ball and talk about their run game, one thing they do have going for them, if they can get healthy, is their offensive line.
Yeah.
Their center is a name we are very familiar with, being here in Nashville and the Tennessee Titans in our backyard, and that's Bruce's son, right?
Yeah.
Bruce Matthews, Hall of Fame offensive lineman for the Tennessee Titans, Houston Oilers. His son, this is his third year as a starter on that line. I know he missed some time in the spring with some injuries, fighting those things, but the pedigree he's got, and look at his cousins in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's either Clay or Bruce's son. That's all you got to remember. It's one of those.
It's going to provide some protection, possibly open up some running lanes, and help that running back situation out immensely. So there is potential on the offensive side of the ball for some really good help, just because they have such a strong offensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing about Texas A&M, I mean, this is what's interesting about the West, because I think everybody looks at the West and they go, Alabama, they're missing a quarterback, they're going to be good. Auburn's, got, a quarterback that they feel they're comfortable around. They think they're going to have a better defense. LSU, if they could ever get their quarterback right, they could be just kind of this wild card team. Ole Miss is going to have a salty defense. They got to get their quarterback right. Mississippi State has a quarterback. They just got to make sure they get kids that are more experienced. And then, but I mean, you look at the SEC West, I mean, the difference between 1 and 7 is so minute, it's not even funny. And so that's what's so crazy is Texas A&M could have a really good team and finish 7-5, and they could be the wild card to go 11-1. That's just kind of how crazy it is, and it's what makes this so difficult to take a look at. Most of the rankings I've seen, of preseason has been, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, kind of picking the 6th, 7th, 5th, 6th, 7th, kind of the seller of the league. And I'm sitting here going, man, that's, those could be 2 really good teams. And so it's interesting how that works out. So everybody's got their weaknesses and everybody's got their strengths. So this is probably the most difficult one side of the division, that we're taking a look at with these 2 teams tonight, that is going to be a constant theme as we do these preseasons rankings or preseason things is, how good is this depth in the West going to be? I mean, that's what's going to be fascinating to watch this fall.
No, that is our problem. And I mean, everyone who sits here and does sports, and if you want to ask them realistically if they're going to give you an honest answer, not just sit there and try to, drum up listeners or try to elicit responses, they're going to tell you this is anybody's West.
Yeah.
Alabama could walk away with 2 or 3 losses. And the same thing can be said with A&M. They might end up with 2 losses. And so you just don't know, because like you said, it's almost like I think it's even stronger than last year from a complete standpoint, whereas last year there were a few more star players, I think, to shine at the beginning of the season, where we had to look forward, and we were forward looking at these different programs. We had some more stars that were out there to hang some hats on, and it's so well balanced. And like you said, every team's got an issue that they've got to deal with in the West. And so will they be able to come through, follow through, punch through, and get where they need to win the West? That's a very difficult thing to set here right now in the middle of August without seeing a game and knowing what's going to happen with injuries. Because one team that right now could be, we could say Alabama, and if they get a key injury or 2, regardless of their depth situation, they're going to be hurting if it's the right 1 or 2 individuals. The Ole Miss is still not as deep as I bet they want to be. They're an injury or 2 away from being in the bottom of the West. Arkansas is starting to get some depth, but you look at they're just in year 3 of the coaching change, and so you don't build depth overnight. I mean, you listen to Butch Jones. I know we're not doing Tennessee, but you listen to Butch Jones up here talking, and all he's done is been out there pumping how great Tennessee is and how they're going to build this championship program brick by brick. And then he comes out yesterday talking about, whoa, we need to calm our jets a little bit here. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. He's all of a sudden trying to temper expectations that he's built up for himself because he realizes that, who was it that just went out for 6 weeks there on their offensive line?
For Tennessee.
You remember what his name? Yeah. They had a player, and so now they're riddled on the offensive side of the ball. So because they're struggling in year 3 with the depth issue. It's going to be somebody's going to have an Achilles heel. Every team is going to have one in the West, and which one comes through without getting that heel cut. I think at the end is going to emerge the champion. It might not be the best program that wins the West this year. It could be who gets through and manages the best with what they have and survives. And sometimes luck's going to have something to do with that. And I'm not talking about Andrew.
Yeah. The other thing that Texas A&M's got for them, they're going to be playing in a freshly renovated stadium. Last year was kind of the transition year into that stadium. Now you're talking, huge number, 100 and it's the largest stadium in the SEC now, I believe, once they get it completed. And so, so now how does that atmosphere change? How does that actually work? As much as you want to say that there's an atmosphere there, last year it probably was hindered because you're playing in kind of a half construction site type deal. And now it's all nice and sparkly, and be interested to see how that plays out, especially through the first 8 weeks that they're pretty much staying in Texas.
I don't know if this is after the renovation or not, but it's showing 102,512.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember how it actually works. That's probably pretty close because I think
Neyland's going to be.
Well, see, I remember Neyland shrunk theirs, because Neyland decided to put bricks in the end zone so you can break your neck if you catch a diving ball into the corner.
Neyland's 102,455 for Neyland's what it's listed. So they've got them by less than 100.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Long, but they'll get that changed pretty soon. They'll find some seats somewhere.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But when you look at A&M as we wrap them up, a couple of points we'll reiterate if other side of the SEC. Their SEC East opponents are at Vanderbilt and home against South Carolina. South Carolina's a wild card right now. We mentioned that. We don't know what you get. Vanderbilt might be a spiraling shipwreck that's ablaze in flames, and from the outside you're watching it because you don't know what's going to happen next. But it's not because it's going to be good football.
Yeah.
And we're going to do them soon, so we're going to get a Vandy guy. We got there's another team. We give them no love, and I get that all the time when I walk around to my friends. But that in and of itself is a whole other story. But from the East, they've got a fairly favorable matchup. I mean, it's the bottom of the East, and then a middle of the road pack. So
yeah, definitely. You're not getting that Tennessee flash. Particular. It could be Florida. With a good defense, or Georgia, or anything from that standpoint. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you anymore. I've lost you. You can hear me? I can't hear you at all. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.